If you want Apple CarPlay or Android CarPlay in your Mini Cooper, stick around because we're going to turn this old radio into a touchscreen with CarPlay. We're going to also add a reverse backup camera to the Mini. This is a full instructional video, so I'll speed up the parts where I'm unscrewing or removing things. If your Mini or BMW already has CarPlay, but it only covers 75% of the screen and you want it to be full screen, I have a video covering how to update the code to get full screen visibility. I'll put a link to that video in the top corner right now, as well as at the end of this video. On the Mini Coopers between the early 2010s through 2020, there are many different radio unit types. This installation is specific to the stock radio unit with 2 twist buttons, and then you'll want to see if the dashboard overhangs the air vents. On our stock radio model, the hazard button is just 1 piece, not 2. If you have an NBT head unit, you can purchase a decoder box for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and install that instead of having to install a whole new head unit. On an NBT unit, you keep the screen and just add this decoder box. I'll have a link to the decoder box in the description of this video. Lastly, for newer Evo and Entry Nav 2 units, it's likely you only need a coding update done to get CarPlay. See my linked video on how to activate CarPlay with these units. If you aren't sure which head unit you have, you can run a search by inputting your VIN number into a VIN search, and the results will provide all the features your car has. I like to use the website OEM Navigations. I'll provide a link to their VIN search in the description of this video. Last week I hit 2,400 subscribers, so a big thanks to everyone that's subscribed, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to help me to continue to grow this channel. Let's take a look at what comes in the box. This is the replacement head unit. At the top in the middle, you'll see a tab that can be pushed down. You'll need to push down on this tab on the stock head unit later when we're removing the stock radio unit. Here's our touchscreen, and on the back are the main connection areas that we'll be plugging into. Here's our car harness. We'll connect to the screen as well as the head unit, and then you can see a big connection box. This will connect to the car. This is the audio video input. It also has a power accessory for the screen's fan and a plug-in for the microphone. But most importantly, there's a 12-volt blue wire that we'll need to connect to the reverse camera's wire. That will provide power to our reverse camera. Speaking of the reverse camera, here's the input for our reverse camera. And here's some additional accessories for the reverse camera. Here's the trim tool that came with the kit. We'll use it to hide the reverse camera's wire and to remove some pieces of trim. This is our GPS unit, and it screws into the back of the screen. And we have 2 USB ports. Step 1, we'll take our screen and put it into the back of the head unit, and the head unit had some brackets that we'll use to hold the screen down. To remove our old head unit, we need to find these 2 push pins and remove them. You can use a Phillips head screwdriver and gently push into the center of each pin, and then they'll pop out. To remove the head unit cover, pull it straight back to yourself, and it should come right off. Next, we're going to remove this trim piece that's right above the head unit. Just stick in the trim tool and slide it all the way around, and it should wedge up, and then you can pull it right off. Remember the tab that I showed you during the unboxing? Well, it's located under this red circle for the stock unit that you'll need to push down as you remove the head unit. But first, we need to take out 2 T20 screws before we pull out the head unit. As you're using the screwdriver to poke down on the center tab, use the other hand to move the head unit back and forth to loosen it up. Once it starts to wiggle a little bit, use both hands to pull the head unit straight back. We're going to disconnect the wires. I'm going to start with the one for the hazard lights, and remember this one because it will need to go into our new head unit. Of these connections that we're taking off now, the one in the middle is a black radio tuner. We'll need to save this connection piece and put it onto our new head unit. The last connection to remove is the power supply. On our old head unit, we're going to remove these tabs. We also need to remove this hazard button, and we're going to put that on our new head unit. You can go right ahead and pop in the new hazard button. Now we can add the clips from the old head unit. Put the wire back into the hazard button. Take your main wire harness and plug it into the screen. Each connection point is unique, so you won't be able to mess this up. Next, connect the CAN bus unit. And then there's one connection piece that we'll put into the bottom of the head unit. I'll post the wiring diagram so you can see where all the connections go. And if you take a moment to pause the video, please give this video a thumbs up if it's been helpful so far. Next up is our audio, video, and microphone bundle. Remember, it's not the video for our reverse camera though. Go ahead and make the power connection for the screen's fan. Now I'm going to add the GPS unit. Next up is the video input for our reverse camera. The last two open ports are for USB connections. I needed to buy an FM radio adapter because it did not come with the kit. I'll have a product link in the description of this video. The last step is to connect the wire harness to the car, and let's give it a shot. Let's turn on the screen. The first thing you want to do so you don't go crazy is to go to Settings, Device, and then turn off the keypad tones. I'm going to try to take this 3-minute explanation down to 45 seconds. We want to test the reverse camera before we install it. So take the camera and grab the video extension wire and the red power wire and connect them to the camera's connection. Take the red wire and trim off the plastic so some wire is showing, and do that for the red wire on the video wire as well. And twist tie these wires together with a wire nut. Then on the other side of the video extension wire, connect the yellow to the car's video input, and then connect the red wire to the 12-volt wire we identified earlier. You may need to trim the plastic off the wire as well to expose the wire and twist tie them together. I was going to run the wire through the glove box or through this small cubby hole, but the video extension wire wasn't long enough to make it to the liftgate, so I decided to run the wire down the middle of the car. If you pull this trim piece back, you can drop the video wire straight down, and then you'll be able to run it along the passenger seats. I tucked the wire in under this trim piece, then ran it up the side of the cup holder, and then underneath the back seat. Then I ran it back behind the seat belt, and then up behind the seat. When I fold down the rear seat, you can see the trim pieces that I used to hide the wire. So find some trim that you can tuck it under and run it back until the weather stripping, and then you can use the weather stripping to run it up to the middle of the car where we tuck in the wire. There are two T25 screws that we'll need to remove from the liftgate panel. There's a T20 screw on the left and right hand sides of the plastic trim that will need to be removed. To remove the liftgate panel, start on a side and start to pull down and work it loose. There are 8 plastic clips that will need to be popped out. Each side panel has 1 plastic clip. Pull it towards the center of the car to free the 2 side panels. The center piece has 3 plastic clips. Pull it back towards you to remove it. There are two headliner retainer clips we'll need to remove so that we can pull the headliner down and feed the wire through it. A trim toolkit is helpful in removing the clips so that you don't break them. I'll have a link in the description of the video. When you pull the weather trim up, you'll be able to pull down the headliner. You'll want to remove the tubing so the wire can pass through. I tried feeding the wire up the tubing, but it's a little too tight. It looks like it is possible, but it's not worth the headache. We'll do the same thing to remove the top part of the tubing. The next step is to remove the liftgate handle. There are 8 T20 screws on the back of the liftgate that will need to be removed. You should be able to pull off the trim piece with a little pressure, and then you'll also want to remove the electric connection piece. On the liftgate handle, find a spot you'll want to install the camera. Make sure there's room on the other side to pull the wires through. I made a pilot hole on the other side. It made it a lot easier to get the screw in. I used a 1/2-inch bit to make a hole. Once you have your hole, feed the wire through. I was going to use some caulking to cover the hole, but I ran out, so I'll come back and seal it up later. Feed the wires back into the liftgate and open it up to reinstall the 8 screws that hold down the outer trim piece. Now here's the important step. We're going to take the red 12-volt wire and connect it to the wire labeled for reverse light 12 volt on the diagram, and use a wire nut to make the connections to the extension cable that runs up to the radio. We can tuck the wires away, and if you have a zip tie or some electrical tape, you can hold the wires in place. Time to put back the trim pieces. Start with the ones on the side and then the centerpiece. Next, we'll tuck back in the tubing. I put a little electrical tape around our wire so it wouldn't be directly pinched on the metal. Now we can start tucking the extension wire in until it gets to the spot where we start to run it up to the head unit. Just apply some pressure on the trim pieces to get them to pop back into place. It's easier to start on the sides to make sure the clips are lined up and then move into the middle. Reinstall the T25 screws. And reinstall the headliner clips. Now it's time to test to see if the reverse video works. If the backup lines are too high, you can manually adjust the camera down.